First then, a basic introduction to the Bible as a whole. The word Bible comes from the Greek ta biblia, meaning the books, or maybe more literally, the little scrolls. The word Bible refers actually to a library of 66 books. Maybe that's a good way to think about the Bible, because it's made up of lots of different types of literature. It's a library of books. The Bible can be divided into two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Or maybe a better word to use would be covenant. A covenant is an agreement. So in the Bible, then we have the Old Covenant of ancient Israel, the Old Testament, and we have the New Covenant of the Church of Jesus, the New Testament. The Old Testament was written in the period from about 1500 BC through to 400 BC. The New Testament was written from AD 45 thereabouts through to 100 AD. So the whole Bible was written over a period of about 1500 years. It has more than 40 different human authors, mainly Jews, but also Gentiles, non-Jews, like Luke, the Gospel writer, for example. But to understand the Bible correctly, we need to realize that the Bible claims ultimately to be the Word of God. It's God telling us about God. The Bible was mainly written in Israel, but actually written on 3 different continents: Asia, Africa, and Europe. It was written in 3 languages: Hebrew, so the Old Testament mainly is in Hebrew, but also Aramaic. Parts of the Old Testament are in Aramaic, and then there are the odd words or phrases of Aramaic in the New Testament as well. And then Greek. Greek was the language of most of the New Testament. So Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. We also need to understand, as we come to look at our Bibles, that the chapters and the verses that we have in our Bibles, they're very useful for finding our way around, but actually they've been added a lot later. They aren't part of the original Bible. They were actually added in the Middle Ages. And the same with the section headings that you find in your modern translations. Those have been added by the publishers. They're not original parts of the Bible. I don't know whether you've ever thought about it, but John, the Gospel writer, never knew that he'd written John chapter 3, verse 16. We also need to understand that the order of the biblical books that we find in the Bible is not chronological. That they're not ordered in the way that the events happened. For example, Job probably lived at the same time as Abraham, but his book, Job, appears in the middle of the Old Testament, not the beginning, because it's been grouped with other books of wisdom literature. So they're not ordered chronologically. Well, let's focus in on the New Testament. The New Testament is made up of 27 books. Those books also are not arranged chronologically, but they're grouped into 3 main sections. You'll notice that I've given you a table in the PDF notes. Please could you fill in the blanks on that table? So first of all, see that section, historical books. Well, there are 5 historical books, Matthew through to Acts. And then the next section, letters or epistles. There are 21 books in that section. That accounts for Romans through to Jude. And then finally, in that last section, apocalyptic books, there's one book, Revelation. So 27 books in total in the New Testament.